So this is still chapter 2a. This is day 3. We've done adding and subtracting integers. Now we're going to do multiplying and dividing integers. The hardest part about multiplying and dividing is just not mixing it up with adding and subtracting. That's the hardest part. So there's 2 rules we're going to learn. One of them is for same signs. And in an effort to help you keep these straight, for multiplication and division, I give you a couple silly things to help you remember. So here's the silly thing. And maybe you might know these expressions. Birds of a feather. Birds of a feather. Does someone know how to finish it? Flock together. Nice. Good job. This is a very old saying. Birds of a feather flock together. So flocking together for birds is a positive thing. It keeps them safe. So when they flock together, it's a positive thing. So using birds of a feather, which means birds of a feather means birds of the same type tend to hang out together. That's what birds of a feather flock together. By the way, it's true of high school students too. Give it 2 weeks. If you walk in the cafeteria, you'll see groups with the same clothes on or the same, same fashion taste or similar lunches, but you'll start to see that people tend to flock to people that look like they do. So believe it or not, it's actually true of people as well as birdies. All right, so a positive times a positive. They're both the same. They're birds of a feather. That's a positive. A negative times a negative. Again, birds of a feather, they're the same sign, is also a positive. Division is the same way. If you have a negative number divided by a negative number, you get a positive number over 1. So the positive is on the top. A positive number divided by a positive number is also a positive number over 1. And again, the positive goes on the top. So those are your basic rules. Birds of a feather flock together. So let's practice those rules. Okay, example 1. -8 times -3. Now, if you're just learning these rules, my suggestion is multiply the numbers first and then do the signs. So 8 times 3 is 24, and a negative times a negative is a positive. And again, for just learning, I would highly recommend you put the plus in there. Okay, example 2. +4 times a +2 is a +8. A positive times a positive is also a positive. All right, on your worksheet, there's going to be some like that, where it's just simple multiplication. And then you're also going to have some where you're going to multiply first and then add or subtract. This is your double sign questions. So an example of that would be 4 minus a -6. Now, if you did not learn this in pre-algebra, when you have 2 signs together, like this, it's actually being multiplied. So to simplify the 2 signs out, you just multiply them together. A negative times a negative is a positive, so this is really 4 plus 6. Once you get rid of the double signs, now you're adding or subtracting, and you're going to use those rules. 4 plus 6 is a positive 10. Now, sometimes the signs are going to be like this, just hanging out next to each other. Sometimes they're going to put the second number in parentheses. So this is the same, though, because you still have a positive times a positive. It's being multiplied. And a positive times a positive is a positive. So this is 2 plus 6. And then you use your adding and subtracting. 2 plus 6 is 8. On your homework, if it's just straight up multiplying, you can just write the answer. If it is multiplying and then adding, you need to show this step and the answer step. You don't have to rewrite the whole thing. Just do that step and the answer step. Because if you miss a bunch, we want to know, is it because of the multiplication or is it because of the addition? And if we separate them out like that, we'll know right away what the issue is. All right, let's do some division. Example 5, -9 divided by -3. So a negative over a negative is being divided, and the rules for division are the same as for multiplication. A negative times a negative is a positive. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. So the positive goes up top with the 9, and then you just simplify. 9 divided by 3 is 3. All right, last one of these, and then we're going to do the second rule. -7 minus a -3. This one drives people crazy because there's so many negatives. But here we go. A negative next to a negative is being multiplied. So the -7 is itself, and then a negative times a negative is a positive. So I get -7 plus 3. Now we're going to use our add subtract rules. If the signs are different, subtract the numbers. 7 minus 3 is 4, and the bigger number gives the sign. 7 is bigger, it's negative, so the 4 is negative. I think that's the hardest problem type on this worksheet, is that one, just because there's so many negatives. Just do it in 2 steps. One for the multiplication and one for the addition. Okay, Roman numeral 2. These are the rules for different signs. The rules for different signs. And again, I'm going to give you a silly way to remember this. Rules for different signs. Here is the saying that goes with it. Oil and water. Oil and water. Can someone finish it? Oil and water, what? It is don't mix. If you've ever tried to make salad dressing with a water-based substance and an oil-based substance, they don't mix. They bubble up and stay separate. So oil and water, when 2 things are very different, they don't mix. And that's always a negative thing because they don't get along. So your rules for multiplying and dividing with different signs are negative. They don't belong. Oil and water. So a positive times a negative is a negative. A negative times a positive is also a negative. And then to do division, a positive divided by a negative gives you a negative on top over 1. And a negative divided by a positive gives you a negative on top over 1. All right, let's do an example. We're going to go 5 times a -3. Okay, just doing the signs, a positive times a negative. The signs are different. Oil and water don't mix. It's a negative. And then 15. 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, example 2. -1 times 4. You're multiplying. The signs are different, so oil and water, they don't mix. It ends up being negative, and 1 times 4 is 4. Example 3, let's do some double signs. 5 plus a -6. So just like before, when you have 2 signs together, they are being multiplied, so you use your multiplication rule. A negative times a positive, oil and water don't mix, is a negative. So this is 5 minus 6. You replace the double sign with a single sign. Now we do our add subtract rules. If the signs are different, subtract the numbers. 6 minus 5 is 1, and the bigger number gives the sign. 6 is bigger, it's negative. The 1 is negative. Just about done here. 7 minus a positive 11. Again, sometimes the second number will go in parentheses. Don't let that throw you. You still have 2 signs next to each other. They are still being multiplied, even with the parenthesis in there. So the 7 does not change. A negative times a positive, oil and water don't mix. It's a negative 11. Okay, and again, now we're using our add subtract rules. The signs are different, so subtract. 11 minus 7 is 4. The bigger number gives the sign. 11 is bigger, it's negative. The 4 is negative. Again, on your work, I want to see the single sign and the answer. You do not have to recopy the problem. All right, last one, and then we are done. I think you would know this one already. Positive 15 divided by a negative 3. A positive divided by a negative. Oil and water don't mix, means the negative goes up top with the 15. And now you just divide. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So negative 5 is the answer. This is your show work part. Okay. Are there any questions?